Gingerbread. Joyce leads a literal witch hunt in Sunnydale.
We open with Buffy out patrolling when Joyce appears with a snack and says the activity is one they could share.
She tries to tell Joyce that it's a solo activity and not that exciting when a vampire pops out.
It ends up getting away, and Buffy chases it and leaves Joyce all by herself.
And instead of going home like an intelligent person who just encountered a vampire outside at night, she goes to the park, where she finds some dead kids playing on a merry-go-round, with a weird tattoo on their hands.
They call the police, and Joyce is pretty torn up.
And the tonal disconnect from the goofy jokes that Joyce was making earlier to finding the dead kids was very jarring and didn't really work. And this will become a consistent theme throughout the episode.
At school the next day, Buffy's telling Giles about it, and mentions the markings on their hands, which looks like a triangle trying to masquerade as a different shape, but that mustache is not really working.
Giles says it seems like a ritual murder being committed by a cult. And Buffy asks if there's a loophole about Slayers not killing people, which, I mean, she's already killed people.
Yeah, she's already killed people.
Yeah, the loophole is just not letting people find out.
Right. So kill everybody so there's no witnesses. At lunch, the gang is eating with Amy, and things are awkward between Oz and Xander.
When Buffy shows up and tells them about the kids, and suddenly Joyce shows up too.
Without a visitor pass or sticker or anything. This school, man.
She says she's been having bad dreams about the kids, and Buffy mentions the cult angle, which somehow causes Joyce to immediately jump to witches, making Willow and Amy uncomfortable.
I thought Amy was uncomfortable because the talk shifted to everybody's mom, and Amy's mom, as far as we know, is still a trophy in a case in the middle of the school.
Oh, that's a good point, too. I honestly didn't even think about that.
Yeah, you're insensitive, too.
Buffy and Joyce go out into the hall, where Joyce keeps asking weird questions about dead kids and investigations out in front of everybody.
She says she's called a bunch of people, and there's a big gathering that night at City Hall.
At the gathering, we meet Willow's mom, Sheila, who is very airheaded, even compared to Joyce.
She's very tall, too.
Okay. Giles shows up, and things get awkward between him and Joyce. So awkwardness is also a theme of this episode.
I would argue this show. Mayor Elbrin gives a speech about how horrible the whole thing is, and then Joyce takes the stage and calls out the town for being a weird place where monsters show up and kill people all the time.
And the way the scene is shot and the choice of music makes it seem like it's supposed to be serious, but her lines make it really goofy.
How many of us have lost someone who just disappeared? Or got skinned? Or suffered neck rupture?
And she calls for them to take back their town, starting by finding the people responsible for the kids' deaths.
Which causes the audience to erupt in applause, and I did too, because I thought it meant they were going to kill all these characters off.
Yeah. Later, we see a bunch of witches performing a ritual with the mustache triangle, including Amy and Willow.
The next day, or some other time, some stereotypical bully kids pick on one of Amy's witchy friends in the hall, but Buffy shows up and scares them away, unfortunately.
What did Cordelia say here?
I said she tells Buffy witches were responsible for the killings, and that trouble comes from hanging around them.
Alright, let me sum it up. And then Cordelia shows up and is a bitch.
Okay. And Giles tells her that witches may actually be behind things in this case, and that he needs a book back that Willow borrowed.
So Buffy goes to find her. Xander is stewing in his own guilt about him and Willow, but it seems like the writers couldn't actually find a spot for this subplot, so they kind of just stuck it in anywhere, and it never fit.
Yeah, that's true.
Buffy doesn't really seem to care, and neither did I, and then she finds the mustache triangle in Willow's notebook.
Right out in the open. A bunch of police suddenly show up and start searching everyone's lockers, eliciting joy from Snyder, which was pretty funny.
This is a glorious day for principals everywhere. No pathetic whining about students' rights, just a long row of lockers and a man with a key.
And the handheld footage makes it look like it's supposed to be a tense scene, but it was pretty ridiculous.
Willow says the mustache triangle is harmless, and she used it in a protection spell for Buffy.
Which is broken now that she told her. What a good spell.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd ever describe any magic symbol as harmless. And in the library, they're raiding all of Giles' books.
But apparently they don't find any weapons.
Even though they were in that cage. Snyder says that Giles can't do anything, and if he tries, he'll have to answer to Moo.
Mothers opposed to the occult. A powerful new group.
And Giles just complains instead of admitting that housing his personal weird books in the school library was a stupid idea to begin with.
Agreed.
Willow talks to her mother, who thinks her interest in the occult is a delusional phase and a cry for discipline, and tries to ground her.
She's super analytical, and she treats Willow like some sort of test subject, and Willow gets pissed.
She tries to tell her mother that she can really do things with witchcraft, but then she starts acting out and talking about worshipping Satan and stuff. It didn't really make sense.
So her mom forbids her from seeing Buffy, while at the same time, Joyce forbids Buffy from seeing Willow.
Buffy says Giles needs his books back, and Joyce says he'll get them back when the offensive ones are removed. Obviously she's right, again, that they don't belong in the library, but she was still acting particularly stupid.
Yeah, my note says Buffy rips into Joyce for being an idiot.
And Joyce also says that Sunnydale isn't getting any better despite Buffy's slaying, which made no sense.
And after Buffy leaves to go on patrol, we see the two murdered kids who are not murdered talking to Joyce, saying she has to hurt the people that hurt them.
And then, just when I thought the episode couldn't get any worse, Angel shows up to have an inconsequential conversation with Buffy.
I think that could be a repeating soundbite in many, many episodes.
She tells him about her argument with Joyce and questions whether Sunnydale is any better because of her actions, which again was pretty stupid considering all the threats she's ended, including multiple potentially world-ending ones.
And he tells her it's important to keep fighting even though they'll never completely win. And they actually both managed to keep their clothes on during this conversation.
Buffy goes to Giles, who is struggling to use a computer now that his books are gone.
And she brings up questions like, what are the kids' names, and who are the kids' parents, but they don't have any answers.
And of course, since she's the main character, she's the only person who ever noticed that.
They contact Willow,
via the internet,
who does some research and finds out that the same two kids are always murdered every 50 years, and going back far enough, they find out their names.
Willow's mother interrupts and says she now realizes that Willow is a real witch, and she takes away her computer.
And says she has no choice but to let her go with love.
Giles mentions a fringe theory that some regional stories are based in fact, which, no shit, there's no reason they couldn't be. That was the dumbest line from Giles so far in this show.
And that these kids are Hansel and Gretel, and some demons thrive on having communities tear themselves apart.
The witch kid that was getting bullied earlier shows up, saying he was attacked by his father and his father's friends, and that they already got Amy.
So the gang goes to save Willow, who is not doing so hot.
While Buffy and Giles get ambushed by Joyce and her posse.
Xander and Oz find Willow missing, and the town has Buffy, Willow, and Amy strung up to burn as witches.
And all this is taking place indoors, which doesn't really seem like the safest way to do it.
Oh, okay.
You're starting a fire inside, you're going to have smoke and everything, it's going to smell bad because there's bodies burning, and you could catch the whole place on fire.
Yeah, they're not really thinking straight.
If only I had been there to give them some tips.
Cordelia shows up and slaps Giles around.
And there's some good humor about how often he gets knocked out.
I came over here to tell Buffy to stop this craziness and found you all unconscious. Again. How many times have you been knocked out, anyway?
And they both go to save the people about to be burned.
Buffy wakes up to Joyce and Willow's mother bonding over how they are about to immolate their daughters.
Amy performs the spell via the magic of CGI and turns herself into a rat. And why Buffy didn't just break out of the ropes, because they're just ropes, is beyond me.
Willow and Buffy threaten to turn all the others into animals with their own magic.
Giles and Cordelia are working on a spell as they drive to City Hall, while Oz and Xander crawl through the biggest air ducts I have ever seen.
Well, you haven't seen my review of Creepozoids yet. There's a plug for a future video.
I mean, I've played Goldeneye, and even those weren't that big.
When they get to City Hall, Giles picks a lock to get in. And that was the best character development we got in this episode. He recites a spell in German, while Cordelia hoses everyone down amid some bad audio mixing.
Cordelia, put out the fire! Oh, right.
And Giles' incantation causes the kids to turn into the actual demon.
Everyone else freaks out and starts running away, and the monster approaches Buffy.
And she manages to snap the post that she's tied to when, again, she couldn't snap the ropes.
And she accidentally impales the monster through the neck.
It was very anticlimactic.
Yup, just what I expected. Then Oz and Xander drop in to rescue everyone.
You're making jokes like the show now. Later, Willow and Buffy are discussing events and working to turn Amy back into a human, but it's not working.
And Willow mentions that her mother experiences selective memory loss just like Joyce used to. How convenient.
So it appears that everyone in the town remembers everything that happened, which is ridiculous, and I wonder how that's going to be addressed in the coming episodes, if it is at all.
I thought it was kind of funny, but it was still pretty dumb at the same time. Gingerbread. Overall,
I was kind of hoping for a Gingerdead man type thing where there'd be a big gingerbread killer.
I was hoping they'd find a gingerbread house out in the woods and there would actually be a Hansel and Gretel kind of situation where they're fighting a witch in the woods. I thought that could have been cool.
Unfortunately, we got this. I thought it was good that we got Joyce in there a little bit more, and that people finally addressed that they live in Monsterville, although I really wonder if they're going to bring up any of this again, or remain concerned. At least in Bad Eggs, they attributed the events to a gas leak and everyone kind of forgot everything at the end, but that did not appear to happen here. It was good that Amy showed up again, and is now pretty much out of the picture, so I don't have to keep asking about where she is when they could use magic help. But now, I'm going to have to be asking the same question about that other kid.
Because he proved to be so beneficial in this episode.
He was part of the group. I liked the idea of the episode, but it felt way too rushed. It had way too many tonal shifts. And with them wiping out the demon in 5 seconds at the end, what was that? It was interesting to see Willow's mom. I thought she could have been an interesting character to keep around, but seeing as how she hasn't shown up yet, and by the end of this episode she was gone again, I don't see that happening. My biggest problem was it was ridiculous that nobody thought to ask the questions about the kids from step 1, including the police when they showed up at the scene. Was the demon's influence that strong from the beginning? And did the 2 kids have to be present to make people not think clearly? What if 2 people across town were talking about the murder and somebody said, what were their names? Who were they? What happened? I thought this episode could have been good. All the pieces were there. But this gingerbread house sucked. Was poorly constructed. That's better.
Yeah. I'll put in both of those. I'll put in that whole thing.
So people can really dig into our process here. I gave it a D+.
I gave it a D. This was a frustrating episode even for this show. Lots of dumb ideas, a very sudden wrap-up, no real resolution to anything. Amy being turned into a rat shows how dangerous magic is, but these dumb characters will undoubtedly keep playing with it.
It's harmless, they said.
The most frustrating thing for me was the way they kept presenting things as if there was a serious threat, but then they would have the parents act in such a goofy, empty-headed way that resulted in such a tonal disconnect that nothing worked at all. They needed to either treat it seriously and have it be an actual threat, or make it goofy and play it for laughs, not try to do both at the same time. They also managed to make Joyce look like the idiot that she was in earlier episodes. It seemed to me like they've been kind of building her up a bit more lately, but this episode took a big step back. And something that never got explained was the tattoos on the hands of the kids. Willow said that it was a protection spell when she was using it, so why was it on the hands of these dead kids that turn out to be a demon?
Yeah, I didn't think about that. Was the demon trying to protect itself?
That's as good of an explanation as any.
Maybe just thought it looked cool.
I thought this was an especially bad episode, and I honestly don't know if it would be worse if they never mention these events again, or if they keep talking about them. But at least Angel was in only one scene.